about 100 years earlier? Upon hearing this, Lin Dong was once again astonished. As far as he knew, the ancient world-ending war, from the invasion of the Great Thousand Worlds by the extraterritorial clans to their eventual retreat, lasted only around 300 years. What kind of concept was it to bring it forward by 100 years? The extraterritorial clans had already set their sights on the Great Thousand Worlds long before, said the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign. According to the current records, after the extraterritorial clans launched the world-ending war, the Great Thousand Worlds immediately fell into a disadvantage. It was only due to the appearance of the 10 so-called strongest beings that the Great Thousand Worlds gradually gained the upper hand and ultimately forced the extraterritorial clans to retreat at a great cost. Indeed, Lin Dong nodded, as this was the mainstream narrative in the Great Thousand Worlds. But what if people knew that the extraterritorial clans had already launched their attack 100 years earlier? The Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign continued. In fact, in the 100 years before the world-ending war recorded in the Great Thousand Worlds, the extraterritorial clans had already sent out a large number of experts from all directions into the Great Thousand Worlds. But just at that time, something happened that forced all the extraterritorial experts entering the Great Thousand Worlds to immediately halt their attacks and rapidly retreat. What happened in the extraterritorial world? Lin Dong asked. Someone from the Great Thousand Worlds single-handedly charged into the extraterritorial clan's domain, replied the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign. Was it the Upper Spirit King? Lin Dong suddenly realized. Exactly, it was the Upper Spirit King, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign affirmed. How is that possible? The Upper Spirit King alone enters the extraterritorial world, and even if the extraterritorial clans sent out most of their experts to attack the Great Thousand Worlds, the remaining Heavenly Emperor-level experts should still number over 100, right? Lin Dong was shocked again. Over 100 Heavenly Emperors would be equivalent to over 100 Heavenly Supremes in the Great Thousand Worlds. How strong and courageous must the Upper Spirit King be to dare to enter the extraterritorial world alone, especially since all of the extraterritorial clans' Great Saint Emperors and Sacred Emperors were used as trump cards in the world-ending war. They certainly wouldn't be sent at the start of the war. In other words, if the Upper Spirit King entered the extraterritorial world alone, he would have to face all of the extraterritorial clans' Great Saint Emperors, Sacred Emperors, and over 100 Heavenly Emperors. That's how it was. The reason we know about this is because after the Upper Spirit King charged into the extraterritorial world, he returned to the Great Thousand Worlds unharmed. Later, when he conversed with me, he mentioned this event. Haha, I didn't believe it at first, said the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign. But after that, the extraterritorial clans remained silent for nearly 100 years, and they even stopped their usual provocations toward the Great Thousand Worlds. In my opinion, they were probably reorganizing the plans and casualties that had been disrupted by the Upper Spirit King's surprise attack. So, you can estimate how much damage the Upper Spirit King caused to the extraterritorial clans for them to take 100 years to recover. That's... Lin Dong was left speechless, stunned. If this was true, then it was an underestimation of the Upper Spirit King's abilities to say that he only killed one Great Saint Emperor and Sacred Emperor of the extraterritorial clans. After all, this was a person who could charge into the entire extraterritorial world and return unharmed to the Great Thousand Worlds. Lin Dong wasn't surprised that the Great Thousand Worlds had no record of this, as information from the extraterritorial world was hard to verify. But now, Lin Dong finally understood why even the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign dared not compare himself to the Upper Spirit King. Then why did the Upper Spirit King disappear from the Great Thousand Worlds? Lin Dong's most confusing question now was this. How could someone who was even a match for the entire extraterritorial clans just disappear without a trace? Because after the extraterritorial clans had spent 100 years reorganizing, they once again gathered their entire strength and launched the world-ending attack on the Great Thousand Worlds. This was the world-ending war recorded in the Great Thousand Worlds. During this war, the Upper Spirit King, as the records say, killed one Great Saint Emperor and Sacred Emperor of the extraterritorial clans. Afterward, he once again entered the extraterritorial world alone. However, this time, he never returned. At that time, there were only a few decades left until the end of the world-ending war, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign explained. I suspect that the extraterritorial clan's retreat in the world-ending war had something to do with the Upper Spirit King. He is truly the strongest of the great thousand worlds. The strongest? Lin Dong suddenly recalled something. After hesitating for a moment, he finally asked, "By the way, Ice Spirit Elder, do you know of an existence called the Divine Ancestor?" Divine Ancestor? The Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign paused before responding. In ancient times, the leader of the ancient Divine Ancestors was indeed an existence called the Ancient Divine Ancestor. And in the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan, there are also records of the Myriad Spirit Divine Ancestors' methods. However, I have never truly encountered such a person, and it seems I have never heard of any activity related to these two Divine Ancestors, let alone their achievements in the world-ending war. To learn more, perhaps you'd have to ask the Ancient Divine Clan or the Myriad Spirit Divine Clan, I was just suddenly curious, Lin Dong said. As for the matter of the Upper Spirit King, that's all I can tell you. I don't know anything about the Divine Ancestor, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign replied. By the way, there's something I should remind you of now. What is it? Lin Dong asked. One of the requests from Ice Firmament is to unify the Wandering Realm. When you undertake this task, you must be cautious of one person, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign warned. Who? Lin Dong asked. Huamu Elder. Huamu Elder? Lin Dong paused, surprised. He had never heard that name before. Could he be one of the strong figures in the current Wandering Realm? Huamu Elder is someone who has lived since the ancient times. He was also the one who constantly pursued the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign back then. As far as I know, he was saved by the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, but strangely, ever since then, he has regarded the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign as his target to defeat. After every increase in his strength, he would challenge the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, although he was never able to defeat him. The Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign explained. Lin Dong was once again stunned. He hadn't expected that this Huamu Elder was a figure from ancient times. Now, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign had advised him to be cautious of him. Could Huamu Elder still be alive? If so, he must be around 40,000 to 50,000 years old. According to Ice Firmament's investigation, his last known activity was thousands of years ago. So, it's very likely he's still alive now. And if he is, he's most likely still in the Wandering Realm and hasn't left. The Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign continued. Why? Because his last challenge to the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, took place in the Wandering Realm. He's a very strange person. After his defeat, not long after, the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, was slain by a powerful being from an extraterritorial race in the domain of the Mantis. The fall of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, must have been a huge blow to him. He then disappeared into seclusion in the Wandering Realm, which allowed him to avoid the world-ending war. The Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign said, "Will he come after me?" Lin Dong narrowed his eyes and asked. He probably will. After the fall of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, he lost his target. And since you're the successor of the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, he might see you as another sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign. Moreover, he is a heavenly-level battle array master, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign replied. How strong is he? Lin Dong asked. Since Huamu Elder could potentially be an obstacle to his unification of the Wandering Realm, Lin Dong would have no choice but to defeat him. If the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, could do it, Lin Dong believed he could too. However, Lin Dong also understood that such an ancient figure, with thousands of years of accumulated cultivation and power, would not be easy to deal with. Right now, Huamu Elder's strength is hard to gauge. But during the ancient times, in his last battle with the sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, I happened to witness that fight. The sacred drum, Heavenly Sovereign, casually defeated Huamu Elder. Back then, Huamu Elder's strength was only that of a newly ascended Heavenly Supreme. However, with the power of a heavenly-level battle array master, he was much stronger than others of the same rank. The Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign explained. He was already a Heavenly Supreme tens of thousands of years ago. Lin Dong murmured quietly. Now, tens of thousands of years have passed. If he hasn't completely fallen off the path, his strength may have increased. In any case, if you're going to unify the Wandering Realm, you'll have to get past him, the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign said. All I can do is tell you this. What you do next depends on you. I'll find a way to deal with Huamu Elder, Lin Dong nodded. After that, the voice of the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign ceased, and Lin Dong waited as Bing Huan, standing beside him, processed the part of the information that had been imparted by the Ice Spirit Heavenly Sovereign. During this waiting period, an hour and a half passed by quickly. In this time, over 20 days had passed in the outside world. At this point, Lin Dong could sense that the Spirit Sea seemed to be closing, indicating that the month in the outside world was nearly up. Just then, Lin Dong saw Bing Huan's previously closed, pitch-black eyes finally open, in the northern region of the inner domain of Ice Spirit Continent. Today, the Ice Spirit Clan had greeted a group of outsiders in a very friendly manner. These outsiders came from a newly risen force in the nearby Wandering Realm, the Martial Realm. Ever since Lin Dong single-handedly caused an uproar within the Ice Spirit Clan, the name Martial Ancestor Lin Dong had spread among every member of the clan, both inner and outer. The name was known far and wide, though some prideful members of the Ice Spirit Clan were extremely angered by Lin Dong's actions. They claimed that Martial Ancestor Lin Dong had tarnished the reputation of the Ice Spirit Clan, and they vowed to use the full strength of the clan to avenge it. Half a month after the events that transpired, news of what happened within the Ice Spirit Clan spread rapidly to many surrounding forces. The Wandering Realm, being the closest to the Ice Spirit Clan, was particularly startled by the news. Regardless of the faction, everyone was taken aback, as the name Martial Ancestor Lin Dong belonged to the husband of the Martial Realm's ruler in their Wandering Realm. Due to Lin Dong's uproar at the Ice Spirit Clan, various factions within the Wandering Realm began to speculate. Some believed that the Martial Realm would ally with the Ice Spirit Clan to unify the Wandering Realm, while others thought that Lin Dong lacked such ambition and would simply aim to become a sixth dominant power in the Wandering Realm. Amidst this backdrop, many experts within the Wandering Realm readied themselves to choose sides. After all, someone who could single-handedly cause chaos in the Ice Spirit Clan might indeed possess enough strength to unify the Wandering Realm. In light of an inevitable outcome, the choice between resisting or complying would determine the fate of numerous mid-tier factions. Beyond the Wandering Realm, other nearby superforces and ancient clans were also astonished by the upheaval in the Ice Spirit Clan, including the Fire Spirit Clan. Once they learned of the Ice Spirit Clan's disturbance, they quickly dispatched envoys to offer their condolences. Given the friendship between the Ice Spirit Clan and the Fire Spirit Clan, the latter was quite taken aback by the incident. Unbeknownst to the Fire Spirit Clan, however, they were soon to experience a shocking event that would reverberate throughout the Great Thousand Worlds, but that is a tale for later. Returning to the current situation of the Ice Spirit Clan, nearly a month had passed since Lin Dong's chaos there. Meanwhile, individuals from the Martial Realm had received special guest status and arrived at the Ice Spirit Clan, including the realm ruler Ling Qingzhu and others like Yin King and Little Mink King. They were received by the clan leader, Long Feng. Through his narrative, Ling Qingzhu and the others learned about Lin Dong's actions within the Ice Spirit Clan, including his entry with Bing Huan into the Ice God Monument. According to Long Feng and the others, the Ice God Monument had to be retracted from the ancestral ground within the Ice-Fire dimension within 2 days, indicating that Lin Dong would emerge within this time frame. Now granted permission, Ling Qingzhu and her companions headed directly to the northern inner region of the Ice Spirit Continent. Upon seeing the nearly crumbled land, they finally comprehended the terrifying power Lin Dong commanded, realizing they had underestimated him significantly. No wonder Lin Dong had the confidence to come to the Ice Spirit Continent alone. At that moment, on a shattered peak in the northern inner region, 2 figures stood against the howling cold wind. Both were dressed in white. One was Ling Qingzhu from the Martial Realm, and the other was Bing Tsangqiang, who had been waiting here for nearly a month. Despite their age difference, both now held significant power, making their conversations lively and engaging. "Miss, did you foresee this moment long ago?" Bing Tsangqiang asked, standing with his hands behind his back. He looked towards the imposing ice god monument in the distance, where two figures were sitting quietly, waiting for Lin Dong and Bing Huan to emerge. Yin and Little Mink. That is an exaggeration, Senior. Before you took Bing Huan from the martial realm, I had no inkling of your intentions, Ling Qingzhu replied. But at that time, I realized you were taking a huge gamble, wagering everything on the Ice Spirit clan. A gamble? That analogy doesn't fit. I am quite confident, Bing Sangqiong remarked. However, having a woman like you around Lin Dong is certainly no ordinary matter. Lin Dong isn't simple. He's just striving to protect what he values, no matter the cost, Ling Qingzhu stated. To protect what one cherishes is a task anyone can undertake, as long as they are not cowards. The difference lies only in ability and means, Bing Sangqiong countered. Elder Song is just the same, Ling Qingzhu replied casually. Elder Song? Lin Dong's journey to this point owes a lot to Song Heng, doesn't it? Bing Sangqiong inquired. Almost everything within the martial realm has been orchestrated by Elder Song. Unfortunately, he has now left, Ling Qingzhu explained. Left? Why? Bing Sangqiong pried. I don't know the specific reasons, but half a month ago, after the events within the Ice Spirit clan reached the martial realm, Elder Song resigned from his position, leaving no trace behind. His whereabouts are currently unknown. It might be worthwhile to discuss this with him when Lin Dong emerges, Ling Qingzhu noted. Oh, that's quite unfortunate, Bing Sangqiong said lightly. Just then, his brow furrowed, and his gaze fixated directly on the ice god monument ahead. Once finished, Ice Firmament moved swiftly, shooting towards the ice god monument ahead. Behind him, Ling Qingzhu followed closely. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yin and Little Mink, who were meditating before the ice god monument, immediately turned their heads at the sound of the air breaking behind them. They saw Ice Firmament and Ling Qingzhu descending from the air, landing in front of them. Lin Dong is coming out, Ling Qingzhu said as she approached them. Upon hearing this, Yin and Little Mink stood up, waiting. After about 10 breaths, a faint blue light began to envelop the ice god monument. Then, as a swirling vortex appeared on its surface, two figures shot out from the monument. It was Lin Dong and Bing Huan. Though a month had passed outside, Lin Dong and Bing Huan had only spent less than 2 hours within the Spirit Sea world inside the Ice God Monument. Big brother, you're finally out? We've been waiting for so long, Yin said, immediately stepping forward. Why are you here? Lin Dong asked, surprised to see Yin, Ling Qingzhu, and Little Mink. However, he quickly realized that although it had only been 2 hours in the Spirit Sea, an entire month had passed outside, so he wasn't too shocked. Heh, once again you've surprised us, Little Mink remarked with a faint smile. He then turned to Bing Huan beside Lin Dong. Do you still remember me? It's me, Little Mink, you know? Bing Huan shook her head again, and seeing this, Little Mink's face twisted in mock sadness. But just then, Bing Huan chuckled. I was just kidding. I remembered a lot of things after the ancestors' communication, Bing Huan said with a mischievous smile. Little Mink was left speechless, realizing he'd been played. At that moment, Lin Dong stepped forward and walked over to Ice Firmament with Bing Huan in tow. Senior, how is the preparation for the spirit conduction? Lin Dong asked Ice Firmament. You're as impatient as always, Ice Firmament replied with a smile. Don't worry, the first elder is handling it. The spirit array should be set up in a month. Ice Firmament then looked at Bing Huan. Huaner, do you want to stay with the Ice Spirit clan? Or go with Lin Dong to the martial realm? Grandpa, I'm fine in the Ice God Monument, but now I want to go to the martial realm. However, I'll come back when I have time, Bing Huan replied, giving Ice Firmament a warm smile. As long as you remember the Ice Spirit clan, you can return anytime. But the Wandering Realm is quite chaotic, so don't wander off outside the martial realm, Ice Firmament said, reaching out to pat Bing Huan's head. He trusted Lin Dong to take care of her. Don't worry, Grandpa, Bing Huan nodded obediently. Since there's nothing else at the moment, Senior, we'll return to the martial realm now? Lin Dong said. In that case, I won't keep you, Ice Firmament replied. In 1 month, you can return to the Ice Spirit clan to begin the spirit conduction. Understood, Lin Dong nodded. He then opened a spatial portal to the martial realm. After giving a respectful salute to Ice Firmament, Lin Dong led Ling Qingzhu, Bing Huan, Yin, and Little Mink into the portal, returning to the martial realm. The only ones left were Ice Firmament and the towering Ice God Monument. After Lin Dong left, Ice Firmament reopened the spatial portal to the Ice Fire dimension and, with the Ice God Monument in tow, headed towards the ancestral land. At this moment, no one knew that a terrifying storm was already beginning to sweep through the wandering realm. In the martial realm, outside the martial god hall on the 4 profound continents, the space twisted and a portal, about 10 feet wide, materialized. From it emerged 5 figures, Lin Dong and the others, just returned from the Ice Spirit Clan. As they stepped out of the portal, Lin Dong held Bing Huan's hand with one, while clasping Ling Qingzhu's hand with the other. A radiant smile spread across his face, one that had not appeared in a long time, because this time, he had truly returned victorious. Lin Dong's initial goal upon arriving in the Great Thousand Worlds had clearly been achieved. I'll go inform the Lord of Life and Death. We need to celebrate properly this time, Little Mink said, soaring into the sky after stepping out of the portal. Seeing this, Yin also dashed off in another direction to gather Lin Xiao, Lu Yin, and the others, Lin Dong's family and friends. After Little Mink and Yin went to inform the others, Lin Dong smiled and led Bing Huan and Ling Qingzhu into the martial god hall. 11 years. Hey, I finally did it. Standing in the martial god hall, Lin Dong looked up at the highest seat. There, one seat had been left specifically for Ing Huan from the very beginning. Reflecting on it now, Lin Dong couldn't help but feel a bit emotional. Back then, in order to find Ing Huan's reincarnation fragment, he had traveled to the Great Thousand Worlds with Ling Qingzhu and Qing Tan. After several twists and turns, they returned to the heavenly mystic dimension with the help of the Great Thousand Alliance's powerful figures. But that was the last time they returned to the heavenly mystic dimension, as it ceased to exist due to the dimensional baptism shortly thereafter. Everything had been in pursuit of finding out the exact location of Ing Huan's reincarnation fragment in the Great Thousand Worlds. Later, to contend with the Ice Spirit Clan, the martial realm was established. Under Elder Song Heng's guidance, the martial realm developed at an explosive rate. In just a few years, it became a dazzling new star in the wandering realm. At the subsequent Great Thousand Assembly, Lin Dong witnessed many of the greatest experts in the Great Thousand Worlds. Using that as a stepping stone, he received the inheritance of the sacred drum Heavenly Sovereign. Then, with the fortune granted by the true Dragon God Emperor, Lin Dong finally gained enough power and confidence to bring Ing Huan, who had already reincarnated, back to the martial realm from the Ice Spirit Clan. "Sit down," Lin Dong said, pointing at the 3 highest seats in front of him with a smile. The 3 of them then sat down in the highest seats of the martial god hall. "Now, you've resolved your heart's knot, so the position of the martial realm ruler should be returned to you," Ling Qingzhu said. "Come on, help me manage it." "I'm not good at these things," Lin Dong replied, a bit surprised. Just as he had finally relaxed, Ling Qingzhu placed such a heavy responsibility on him. "The martial realm was founded by you. In terms of strength and prestige, neither I nor Elder Song Heng come close to you. So, in the end, this position must still be held by you," Ling Qingzhu said. "Thanks to Elder Song Heng. We really should thank him. Without his help, I think it would have taken me many times longer to reach this point," Lin Dong said. Upon hearing this, Ling Qingzhu's expression slightly darkened. After hesitating for a moment, she decided to speak directly. "Elder Song Heng left the martial realm half a month ago, right after the news of your victory over the Ice Spirit Clan reached the martial realm." Lin Dong, who had been smiling before, froze upon hearing Ling Qingzhu's words, as if he hadn't quite understood what she had said. His expression went blank, and the once quiet martial god hall fell into a profound silence. After a while, Lin Dong slowly closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Where did Elder Song Heng go?" Lin Dong asked softly, his eyes still closed. "I don't know. Perhaps Elder Song Heng himself doesn't know where he's going either," Ling Qingzhu said, shaking her head. "Elder Song Heng joined the martial realm to help you achieve a goal. Now that your goal has been accomplished, he may feel there's nothing left for him to do and quietly left." Isn't Elder Song Heng now a well-known figure? If we send more people, surely it's not impossible to find him? Bing Huan said after thinking for a moment. There's no need to look for him. Since Elder Song Heng chose to leave, that is his decision. It's not something we can change. Just as Bing Huan was offering advice, Lin Dong slowly opened his eyes and spoke calmly. I'm just a little regretful, Lin Dong said. After all, I never got a chance to thank the old man. About an hour later, thanks to Little Mink and Yan's guidance, the Lord of Life and Death, along with other key figures including Qing Tan, Lin Xiao, Lu Yin, and others, arrived at the Martial God Hall. Ing Xuanzi, Ing Xiao, and several others from the heavenly mystic dimension also gradually arrived. However, those brought by Yin and Little Mink were originally from the heavenly mystic dimension. Clearly, they were the first to eagerly await the good news of Bing Huan's return. Lin Xiao and Lu Yin even excitedly picked up Bing Huan, who appeared as a young girl, and held her like their own daughter. In reality, Lin Xiao and his wife had always regarded Bing Huan as their daughter. Now, their family had crossed a dimension and was finally reunited. That day, the Martial God Hall became the venue for a grand celebration. Everyone felt completely at ease and celebrated outside the Martial God Hall. After toasting with everyone, even Yin and Little Mink ended up drunk, lying on the grass outside the Martial God Hall. But Lin Dong didn't get drunk. He sat cross-legged in front of the Martial God Hall, gazing at the stars in the kingly sky, seemingly lost in thought. Bing Huan was asleep in his arms. A soft voice came from behind. Lin Dong turned his head and saw Ling Qingzhu walking towards him and sitting down beside him. At that moment, Ling Qingzhu had put on the familiar veil, which Lin Dong recognized. It was actually because she had drunk some wine and didn't want to make a fool of herself in front of others. I was wondering, we have so many lower dimensions outside the heavenly mystic dimension, and above the lower dimensions is the Great Thousand Worlds. So what lies beyond the Great Thousand Worlds? Lin Dong said lightly. Ling Qingzhu smiled upon hearing this. When did you start caring about such things? It's just curiosity. But this time, I really feel a sense of unprecedented ease. It feels great, Lin Dong replied. Ease, you say? I know about the conditions set by Senior Ice Firmament. They are just too exaggerated, Ling Qingzhu said. I can do it, Lin Dong replied with confidence, smiling. I believe you can, Ling Qingzhu nodded. But just then, both of them suddenly raised their eyebrows. They saw a somewhat timid young girl hiding behind a large tree in front of the Martial God Hall's plaza. Come out, Lin Dong said in a low voice, and upon hearing this, the girl hiding behind the tree trembled slightly and slowly stepped out. The person who appeared was a girl dressed in green, with a delicate appearance and a slender figure. Her large, captivating eyes added to her charm. Lin Dong froze when he saw her. He wasn't unfamiliar with her, as this was the girl who had once deeply admired him in Dao Sect, and ran. However, the young girl who had been just over 20 years old back then had now become a beautiful woman in her 30s. Lin Dong, senior brother. No, martial ancestor. As Lin Dong looked at and ran, her face turned slightly red as she mumbled, not knowing what to call him. Just call me Lin Dong, senior brother. I'll call you Ran, junior sister. Lin Dong waved at her from a distance, signaling her to not be so reserved. Senior brother Lin Dong still remembers me. Haha, what a surprise, Ran smiled, running over. However, she stopped beside the little mink, who was dead asleep due to drunkenness. Seeing this, Lin Dong smiled and shook his head. It seemed Ran wasn't here to find him, but rather for the little mink. What's this? Do you think every girl in the world will always be infatuated with you? Ling Qingzhu teased with a smile as Lin Dong shook his head. I'm not handsome, so how could any girl be infatuated with me? Lin Dong responded with a light smile. At this moment, both he and Ling Qingzhu noticed that Ran had crouched beside the little mink. Ran tentatively reached out and poked the little mink's nose a few times, seemingly trying to test something. Then she carefully tried to lift the little mink up. Ran, junior sister, what are you doing? Lin Dong asked. Lin Xiaominku is sleeping here in such an improper way. I'm going to carry him into the hall to sleep, Ran replied as she finally managed to lift the little mink. Upon hearing this, Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu exchanged a glance and smiled. Unrest, junior sister, you do know that ordinary people are not allowed to enter the martial god hall at will, right? Lin Dong turned and smiled at Unrest. Ah, then what should I do? Unrest froze upon hearing Lin Dong's words. That's simple. Just take the little mink to your home. That way, it won't be improper, Lin Dong smiled. That? How can I? Lin Xiaominku is now the little mink king of the martial realm, but I'm just a celestial transformation realm practitioner. We're too far apart, and Ran hesitated. If you're so far apart, why did you come here? This time, it was Ling Qingzhu who asked. Because after coming to the Great Thousand Worlds, I'm unfamiliar with everything. Many things, like Lin Xiaominka helping me, I still need him. Although he's sometimes fierce, he's a really good person, and Ran said with a smile. Hee, just take him back. What does the gap matter? If he dares to bully you, I'll back you up. I'm his big brother, Lin Dong said. Then, thank you, senior brother Lin Dong. Hee, and Ran smiled, feeling more at ease now that she had Lin Dong's support. Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu watched Ran carry the little mink away, both of them smiling. Only they knew that the little mink's deep sleep was feigned. When someone of the little mink's level falls into such a deep sleep, any disturbance from the outside world would immediately be detected. A few days after the banquet, within the martial god hall, Lin Dong gathered all the high-ranking elders of the martial realm for a conference regarding matters related to the Ice Spirit clan. With Ling Qingzhu stepping down from the position of Realm Master, the dominion of the martial realm had finally truly fallen into Lin Dong's hands. Now that Lin Dong had become a true heavenly supreme, the martial realm was entering a completely new stage from this moment on. As the martial realm stepped into this new phase, far away in a pitch-black area distant from the martial realm, a figure in white was swiftly moving forward. This place was somewhere in the lower dimension world, and the figure navigating through it was Elder Song Heng, who had left the martial realm. He was heading to a specific destination. In the dark lower dimension world, Song Heng's journey had already lasted nearly a month. At this point, the distance between him and the martial realm had exceeded billions of miles, and the place he was headed to was a prominent force in the current lower dimension world. What Song Heng ultimately wanted to accomplish was that particular matter. Lin Dong, the only thing I can do to help you is this. How you proceed from here will depend on yourself. A low voice emanated from Song Heng as he spoke, and soon the darkness before him gradually dissipated, revealing a strange area filled with hundreds of lower dimension spaces. Looking at the cluster of lower dimensions ahead, Song Heng knew that he had arrived at his destination. It was the first time he had witnessed such a grand scene, where hundreds of lower dimension worlds converged and supported each other, forming a vast resting place that only those super lower dimension alliances could achieve. This was the new site of the Great Thousand Alliance, the domain of Altair. The reason it was named the domain of Altair was immediately clear to Elder Song Heng upon his first glance. Here, hundreds of dimension worlds were arranged in a formation resembling the Altair star cluster in the sky, creating a vast dimension collective spanning billions of miles. In this place, any incident occurring in any dimension world would be immediately known to other lower dimension worlds. Every event was as if it happened right at one's doorstep. However, the vast distances of tens of millions of miles between each dimension world provided ample time for the others to prepare for any possible calamity, so each world remained far away. As the primary domain of the domain of Altair, there were prominently 6 huge and noticeable super lower dimension worlds. Although these 6 super dimensions did not rank among the top 10, they were only slightly behind. Swish, swish, swish. As Song Heng approached the domain of Altair, sounds of breaking through the air reverberated, followed by a heavily armored regiment of hundreds charging towards him with great momentum, effectively blocking his path. Who goes there? After blocking Song Heng's path, a young man at the forefront of the regiment spoke in a deep voice, and if Lin Dong were here, he would recognize this person as Xiang, whom he had encountered when he first arrived in the Great Thousand Worlds. Had it not been for Xiang bringing the powerful figures of the Great Thousand Alliance, Lin Dong and the others would have had difficulty dealing with the likes of the Infinite Ancestor during their spirit energy assimilation. A decade had passed, and the once third-grade Supreme Xiang had now advanced to seventh-grade Supreme. I am surnamed Song and previously sent a letter to the Nan Tianzi Alliance leader. Song Heng regarded Xiang with composure, hands clasped behind his back. Surnamed Song? Sent a letter to the Nan Alliance leader? Could it be that it's Elder Song, the first authority of the martial realm, whom my father mentioned? Upon hearing this, Xiang was momentarily taken aback, and when he heard martial ancestor, he felt a wave of emotion. He had not expected that someone he had encountered as a peer back when he was merely a third-grade Supreme would now firmly establish a significant entity in the martial realm and become a potential sixth sovereign of the Wandering Realm. However, Xiang remained unaware of the events that had unfolded in the Great Thousand Worlds, nor had the incident involving Lin Dong's chaos within the Ice Spirit clan reached the lower dimension world. I am no longer a person of the martial realm, Song Heng replied. I am here to meet with the Nan Tianzi Alliance leader and that Yuan Cheng. Upon hearing that Song Heng was no longer part of the martial realm, Xiang was slightly surprised, wondering if there had been some internal strife within the martial realm that caused such a core figure to leave. Nevertheless, he immediately said, "Please, Elder Song, follow me. I do not have the authority to directly take you into the first star realm, but I can take you to see my father, who will then lead you to meet with the Nan Alliance leader." The star realms in the Xiang world are directly referred to as the various major dimension worlds within the domain of Altair. The domain of Altair contains 512 star realms, with the 6 largest main star realms governed by 4 heavenly supremes and 5 semi-heavenly supremes. As for the 7th to the 99th star realms, each is ruled by a Earth Supreme powerhouse. Xiang's father, relying on his lower Earth Supreme strength, became the lord of the 57th star realm. Beyond the 99th star realm, the hundreds of other star realms are each governed by at least 10 Supreme-level experts. Such a meticulously arranged layout of powerhouses, combined with the strategic distances between the star realms, formed an impregnable domain of Altair. This plan was proposed by Yuan Cheng, a mysterious figure whose appearance was rarely seen. Let's go. Next, Song Heng followed Xiang toward the 57th star realm. At this moment, Xiang was unaware that this meeting between Song Heng and Nan Tianzi would completely change the course of the Great Thousand Alliance. Not long after Song Heng arrived in the domain of Altair, another event, destined to shock the Great Thousand Worlds, began elsewhere, hundreds of billions of miles away in a lower dimension world. This place was the first continent of the Do domain, the Flame Emperor continent. Although a month had passed since the 10,000 pills gathering in the Great Thousand Worlds, the news that the revered Flame Emperor, Xiao Yan, had won the championship still brought joy and celebration throughout the Do domain. Because of this living legend, many people in the Do domain became more diligent in their cultivation. Xiao Yan's strength had given the entire world confidence. At this moment, the one who had given the Do domain even greater confidence, Xiao Yan, was in a mountain range somewhere on the Flame Emperor continent. While the world outside celebrated, he was preparing for something. Walking through the lush green mountains filled with life, Xiao Yan gazed at the countless herbs around him, which he had planted during the creation of the Do domain. These herbs were growing exponentially, making the spiritual energy of the Do domain even denser. However, Xiao Yan was a bit troubled, as the world seemed to be filled only with medicinal plants. Perhaps it was time to introduce some other types of vegetation. But Xiao Yan's reason for being here was not this. He had received a message. The primordial sacred flame had left seclusion. Swish! A sharp sound pierced the air, and Xiao Yan looked up to see the figure of Tai Pang descending. Tai Pang had been in seclusion here in the primordial sacred flame, and as his disciple, Tai Pang was naturally also here. Xiao Yan, my master has exited seclusion and is eager to meet you. Tai Pang arrived and cupped his hands toward Xiao Yan, then swiftly moved toward the depths of the mountains. Xiao Yan, seeing this, followed immediately. After a few breaths, Xiao Yan arrived at a vast and peaceful lake, spanning tens of thousands of miles. Surrounded by lush green forests, Xiao Yan was surprised to find that not only medicinal plants grew here, but also many common plants, giving the entire lake and forest a much more natural atmosphere than the outside world. After guiding Xiao Yan to the calm lake, Tai Peng leapt into the water, followed by Xiao Yan. They traveled deeper into the seemingly bottomless lake, and the further they went, the darker it became. Until everything around them turned pitch black, Xiao Yan could no longer see Tai Peng. His hand reached out, but it was as if he couldn't see anything, not even his fingers. The air grew colder, and it felt as if his consciousness would freeze. At that moment, a voice echoed in his mind. The primordial sacred realm is shaped by the heart. Hearing this voice, Xiao Yan's consciousness, which had nearly frozen, suddenly snapped back to life, and the darkness around him disappeared. In its place appeared a familiar lush green mountain range. Standing still in place, Xiao Yan was momentarily stunned. After scanning his surroundings, he realized that everything he had just experienced had been an illusion. Having ascended to the heavenly supreme realm, his divine soul had merged with the world, becoming the heavenly soul, and yet he had still fallen into an illusion. Xiao Yan found this almost unbelievable. Xiao Yan, that was not an illusion. It was the primordial sacred realm. Everything you saw was real. A faint laugh sounded from the forest ahead, and then the familiar figure of the primordial sacred flame appeared with Tai Peng. Seeing the primordial sacred flame and Tai Peng, Xiao Yan grew cautious. If what he had just seen was an illusion, then how could he be sure that the present situation was real? Do not be hasty. There's no need to distinguish everything as true or false. If you believe it's real, it will become real. If you believe it's false, it will disappear. This is the mystery of the primordial sacred realm. The primordial sacred flame spoke, then waved his hand, sending a glowing, spherical dimension embryo into Xiao Yan's hands. He quickly stored away the dimension embryo sent by the primordial sacred flame. Immediately after, Xiao Yan activated it, and the overwhelming sensation of control, stretching across billions of miles, finally confirmed to him that what he was witnessing was no illusion. Never before had any environment been this vast. Not even a heavenly supreme could achieve such a scale.